Hi, tonight we're talking with Michelle Larson of Knowledge for College, and we're talking about student athletes and paying for college. Hey, hi Michelle. Okay, so
Hi, it's great to see
yeah.
you.
So again, everybody, I'm Debbie Schwartz of Road to College, and I also manage the Facebook group called Paying for College 101. And I'm here tonight with Michelle Larson of Knowledge for College, and tonight's topic is student athletes and paying for college. And let me just tell you off the bat, this is not my expertise. I don't know anything about, athletics. I have kids who play sports, but not at that level. And so I'm actually going to be like that parent who knows nothing, and just ask questions. So I'm going to be like the rest of you out there, kind of representing all the clueless people. And we're just going to ask Michelle some questions, have a good conversation, and she's going to share her knowledge. Okay. And another reminder before we get started, I mentioned before to everybody, but if they can type into the comments, oh, I see people are starting to do it. That's great. The sports that their kids are interested in and playing in college. And then we're going to give this a few days, but Michelle's going to go through everybody who comment and pick out a few people to give a free consultation to. So, and we'll remind people of that, but just wanted to start off with that. Okay, so Michelle, tell us a little bit about yourself, what your background is, how you got
Sure,
started in college advising in general, and in this, and kind of how you gravitated to also helping athletes.
sure. So when my son was in the seventh grade, it's not that long of a story, but he's now a freshman in college. And a friend of mine said to me, "What are you guys doing for college?" And I said, "Oh, we're all set. We have 529 plans for all three of our kids." And I was so proud of myself thinking I'm all set. And she looked at me and she said, "That's what I thought too." Her kids were older. And she said, "I think you should go talk to this guy. He might have some information for you." So anyway, long story short, I went and met with him and found out that I wasn't all set. Here I thought I was, and started working with him. We were living in California at the time. I started working with him more on the money side of things. And then I moved to Florida, which is where I reside now. And I was doing a little bit of college counseling, I would call it, and more on the financial piece. And I said to my parents that I was working with, "I'm not really a guidance counselor. Go see the guidance counselor. They'll tell you on the college. I'm more on the money side." Well, then lo and behold, I sent my own children to high school, and you know what I found out? It's not their
Right,
job.
right,
It's not their
right.
job to help you make sure you don't pay too much for college, make sure you pick the right college, maybe a little bit on the career, but not so much. So long story short, I decided to get out of the financial advising business and kind of into this, where I help people find the right college, get into college, and negotiate the best price for college. So that's kind of in the short way how this all came about.
But I mean, the great thing is you do have that financial background, because I don't really
Right,
personally know
right.
how you can go through any piece of this process anymore without understanding the finances and without having somebody kind of help you with the whole cost piece of this. I mean, you can't
I
just
think
focus
that's
on one
critical. Yep.
avenue anymore. All of these things intersect these days.
Correct. And I do actually have partner resources that if somebody wants true financial advising, I can outsource that. But you really have to understand, and just for anybody that gets the consultation, I will talk to you about your own cost of college because I think you need to have an understanding of that as part of the big process. So just know that that's not the purpose today, but that's what we'll talk about.
So do you want to share a little bit about what your own kids' journeys were, like
Oh,
related to the, like the sports aspect and where they are these days? Or you don't have to tell the exact school, but
sure.
what sport they were interested in, that type of stuff.
Sure, I can talk about that. So I believe in a very holistic approach to college planning. So I want to be clear, I'm not an athletic recruiter. But my two oldest kids are both, my son is a freshman in college and he's running the hurdles, he's running track, and my daughter will be a freshman in college next year and she will be playing soccer. So kind of like that hair person guy who says, "I'm not only the president of the company, I'm also a client."
Right.
I'm also a client, right? So So I have helped my kids. So the first thing that I think we should do, so let me tell you my beliefs. I believe that we go to college to get a job, right? Playing sports is a bonus. So what I had my own children do and what I have my clients do, and I think I'm working with a lot of athletes because that's my world, right? In high school, that was my world. And I work with a lot of athletic teams at the high school level just to get my name out and my brand out. And plus my kids are also in that whole uh, arena. So that's how I got started in this and why I probably have athletes. And what I have them do is first we figure out what you're suited to do, then we find the college, then we contact the coach. And that's what I've been able to do with my athletes and my own children. And we'll talk a little bit more detail about that more in general, but I wanted you to know that that's kind of the process. Figure out what you're suited to do. I've got a fabulous assessment tool. Then we find the colleges. Then I've got a specific strategy on how to approach coaches at those colleges.
Okay.
I believe there's, okay, go ahead.
No. I mean, you can continue.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think there are three primary ways that people get noticed in playing sports in college, right? The first way is the Hope and Shirley method. And the Hope and Shirley method, right, is what I think most parents kind of tend to. Well, we hope that we're going to get seen. I mean, surely a college coach is going to look at us, and we tend to really bake a lot on that piece. And a lot of that is because we're getting accolades at the high school level, right? So we assume that look, we're the number one, or we've broken a record, or we've done all of this stuff. Surely those coaches are going to see me. And you know what? Sometimes that does work. Sometimes that does happen. But I have two examples where I want to just talk to you about that might not be the most efficient way to plan to go to college. So the first way is somebody on the soccer field that I knew. So I won't, this is a small community, so I won't say more, but somebody that I knew on the soccer field, I said, you know, hey, do you have any questions? You know what I do, and I'm happy to help you. And he basically said, no, we're all set. We're all set. My daughter's going to play. I know she's going to play. She's got all these interested coaches kind of circling around, and we're all set. So sure enough, senior year comes around. This is last year. Senior year comes around. I get a call in January of last year from the same parent saying to me, so Michelle, can I come in? You know, I have some questions about this. Long story short, they did get an offer from one coach, got $8,000 in soccer money, right? So got a nice soccer piece, but the school was $48,000.
Right.
They were going to have to come up with $40,000, and they just didn't know how to do that. And so this is why I want us to find the right college before we start going into that. And then this happens to me quite a bit, actually. I've had other students that I didn't know, you know, contact me, hey, can you help us? Can you help us? And we try and we talk about it. And I do have some clues on how to go back and negotiate and ask for more aid. Usually that doesn't happen with the coach. Usually the coach is done what they've done. But we can talk to admissions and financial aid, but it's typically not enough. It's not going to take a $40,000 school and make it a $20,000 school. It might bring it down $5,000, but it's not going to bring it down all the way.
That's what's so frustrating. Unfortunately, if people come and search for help a little too late in the process, I mean, there's always a way that you can help, but they've unfortunately missed a lot of opportunities because they didn't start it early enough. That's what.
And we don't have any other offers. You know, now it's January of senior year, and it's really difficult to go and find the coaches and find what we need to do. It's really pretty late.
Okay, so before we get into some basics, I just want to remind everybody, if you're watching, if you want to put into the comments what sport your student is interested in, that'd be great. And then Michelle's going to go through everybody who comments in a few days and pick out a few lucky people to get a free consultation. So if you're interested, which, I mean, if I had a child who was in sports, I would definitely be interested. So just let us know a little bit about what sport they're interested in and put it in the comments section. And I see people are doing it, so that's great. Okay, so again, I am pretending that I am that clueless parent who has, you know, a sports student, and just let's go through some basics. So tell me a little bit about the different, what associations there are, what they're called,
Sure.
what the differences are, and
so
go ahead.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are two primary associations. There's the NCAA that everybody knows, right? So this is and we've all heard a talk about D1, maybe D2 and D3. So I think what would be helpful is if I talk about how their financial aid is done, because again, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so let me talk about that. And then the other association is NAIA, and that is perhaps a lesser tiered organization as far as sports go. But if you're passionate about sports, they have the most scholarships to give.
Wow.
So that is something to think about.
That's interesting.
So I think I read a statistic, it was $430 million in NAIA scholarships. And so again, they're not looked at.
I just don't hear about that association. Again, I'm not in the sports world, but I don't hear that much about that.
Right. Right. So no, that's something to consider. So let's talk, because everybody knows D1, D2, and D3. So let's talk about the difference. So there's D1 schools, and oftentimes people think, oh, well, my son or daughter is good enough, and perhaps their coach has told them they're good enough, and they have broken all the school records, and so we assume that we're good enough, and we think we're going to get a full ride scholarship to a D1 school. So let me tell you in general, and again, I hate to talk in I'm going to talk in generalities, even though I'm a very specific person. So I think that D1 sports, there are 5 primary sports that pay full ride scholarships. Okay, they are basketball, men's and women's basketball, excuse me, football, volleyball, and baseball. The last one just about left me. So those are the sports that will give you a full ride scholarship potentially. All the other sports are what I would call second tier sports. So those are those that you might get a little money, but they're not full ride generally. Again, there's always examples and counter examples, but I'm talking about generally you're not going to get a full ride scholarship in one of those second tier sports. And so how does that look? And so now we're going to talk about second tier sports also at the D2 level. D3 is different, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the D2 level, what happens at these second tier sports in the D2 level is the coach is given X amount of dollars, right? So they're given, and I'm going to make it up, I'm truly pulling this out of my hat just for ease of numbers, but they're given $200,000 to field their whole team. Yeah. And so, right. And so they have whatever that sum of money is, or they'll be told what you get 3 full ride scholarships, whatever that sum of money is, and they have to divide it up between their team. So what these coaches look at and what these coaches like to do is say to themselves, well, can I cobble together, right? Can I take some merit aid, perhaps some need-based aid, so I don't have to use all of my sports money, my athletic money?
They're trying to use their sports money, kind of have it go as far as possible.
Correct, correct. So they will even take, I'll give you a personal example of this. I won't just say it, but I'll give you a personal example. I will tell you they'll take somebody who's maybe equal to or even slightly less skilled if they're going to get a bunch of merit aid, because guess what? They don't then have to take it from their kitty. So when my son was looking for colleges, he was playing football at the time. He's in track now, but we went to visit University of San Diego. And we went to go talk to the coach, and the first question the coach asked was, how are your grades? Not what position do you play, not how fast are you, not anything, how are your grades?
So you think, so potentially, if I'm a student athlete and I have good grades, and my grades are maybe even like above the average at a school that I'm interested in, then you're almost like a bonus to that coach, right? Because they know that they can use other money to possibly get you and not have to use the money that they've been allotted or as much.
Right. Or maybe not as much money that they've been watched. They'll use some, I'm not saying that, but they, they love the people that are the sports and academics. So if there's any students watching, we want academic athletes. That's what coaches are looking for, and that's what's interesting to them.
Okay, so that was D2, right? That you were talking about. So, and does that kind of apply? So, how does that differ to D3 or even the D1 sports?
So, D1, like I said, the top tier sports will give you, and also the second tier sports function a little bit like the D2 sports, if you will. If we can just, again, this is a general conversation, it's not specific, but in general, that's how it works. What you'll look at for D3 is they don't really have any athletic money. Actually, they don't have any athletic money. So the D3 sports doesn't give any athletic money, but they're very generous with their merit and their need-based aid. So like I said, what I tell my students is we're not even going to pay attention to the D level at the time. And NIAI, as I mentioned earlier, has the most athletic money available to students. So keep that in mind. But what I tell my students is we're not going to look at, or we're not going to be focused on what D it is. First, we need to find out what you're suited to do. I have a tool for that. Then we pick out the colleges that are the right size college. Then we look at what D they are. Are they D1, D2, D3, NAIA? For me, it's more of a holistic approach. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. The reality is that, even if you play sports in college, you still you're not going to be a professional player, when you leave. The percentage, I once saw that, like if they do the whole waterfall,
it's a 0.5% or something. Yeah,
exactly. And you know what? Even if you are even if you are in that 0.5% that becomes a professional athlete, that's not your whole life. So you still have to have, something else at some point that you go back to. But anyhow, the majority of kids, even if they play sports in college, are going to have to graduate and get a non-sports job.
Get a job.
Right.
That's cool. And so I'm never a dream killer, right? So I do have some students who believe that that's what they're going to do. And so I talk to them about what if we get injured? Right. So we always have to have a plan B. So even if your son or daughter and you believe that they're that good and they just might be, we have to have a plan B in case of injury.
And that,
because it's so critical that they have something to do.
An interesting comment too, and I'm just thinking, and again, this is my expertise, but I'm just kind of piecing it together from what I know in general and what you're commenting, is that if I'm a athlete and I've gotten to that school based on an athletic scholarship, right? And then I get an injury, I lose that money. If I'm there because I got money from merit, that money stays.
Right. That's right. That's actually a very good point, and very something that, and so I think, let's talk about this just a little bit as well, because I think there's some confusion. So what happens sometimes with people, and I'll be talking to them and they'll say, well, my neighbor or my nephew or my niece, they got a full ride scholarship in whatever the sport. And so here's the thing. Parents may not have any out-of-pocket cost, but we don't know if it's truly a full ride athletic scholarship. And I would tell just exactly what you're saying. You almost want a lot of that to be merit aid, because what happens, like, for example, my son is going to be a chemical engineer. He might get to junior year and come to me and say, you know what, Mom, I can't do it. I can't run track and be a chemical, and it's hard. It's actually freshman year would be too hard for me, but you want to have that flexibility. If you're getting all your money at the athletic thing, then you have to, in order to stay at that school, you probably have to continue in the sport. So it's nice to have it cobbled together. And so what happens, like I said, is usually there's a little bit of sports money, and that varies depending on that varies also on the coach's need. So sometimes if you're a goalie and they don't have a need for a goalie, guess what? Now, even though you're the best goalie out there and you might even be the top rated in your whole area, you might not be needed at that school because they already have goalies or whatever the position is. So we just have to be mindful of that as well.
So, but it's an interesting question. I'm just going to kind of ask it now. Yeah. Laura's actually asking, do colleges let coaches use in-state tuition as part of their budget for recruiting somebody out of state? So she's asking, can you get an in-state waiver for an out-of-state student, as part of this, recruiting process?
Some schools will allow you to do that. There are rules around it with the NCAA as far as how much influence the coach can have. But sometimes the coach can check on the financial aid package. Hey, I'm looking out for this particular student. Did you get there? So the college knows. Oftentimes it's merit-based though. So they'll give you an in-state waiver, or they'll give you enough merit aid to make it as if it's in-state. But I wouldn't count on it. If you are being recruited by an out-of-state public college, and again, there's a big difference between a private college and a public college. If you're being recruited by an out-of-state public college, you need to double check that, because that's not going to be that's more often not the case than it is the case. And again, there's always exceptions. I don't want somebody to say, no, my child did it. You might have gotten it, but that's just the way it works.
So it's something to investigate. You can't rely on it. It's kind of like not my favorite word, but a word that comes up a lot in this whole process is it depends. So it's going to depend.
Correct. Yeah, it is really that, and it's less likely than it is likely.
Right.
So again, I'm a big private. If you're playing sports, the D2 private schools is really where you're going to get the most money, have it be the most affordable. And from an athlete standpoint, this is where you're going to play, right? My daughter's playing soccer because she loves the game,
Right.
and she's going to be able to start at her college as a freshman. If she were playing D1, and I'm not suggesting she's skilled enough, so don't hear me say that, but I'm just saying if she were playing at a D1 school, chances are there's other D1 athletes that would have precedence over her because they've been there for a whole year. So that's something else to think about.
Okay, so going back to basics, and again, I'm being the clueless one.
That's good.
Tell me a little bit about what's signing day? What does that all mean?
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's a good one. That's a good question. So different sports have different signing days. So you'll see perhaps the football signing day, and what does that mean? So I would tell you that it means two different things. So the first thing, if you want to participate in, if you're basically, you get to sign a national letter of intent if you're getting money from a college for a sport. You get a packet in the mail or it's emailed to you, and it's your national letter of intent, and it says, I'm agreeing to play for this school and this sport, and they're agreeing to give me this much money. It doesn't say it exactly like that, but that's the gist of the thing. Then typically high schools, sometimes clubs will have a big celebration. Look at all of our students that are actually playing at the collegiate level, and not only playing at the collegiate level, but also getting money to play at the collegiate level. That's how you get to have a signing day. So you go through the pomp and circumstance, and it is pretty cool. You know, it is, you get your picture taken, typically you're in the paper. I mean, it's a really neat experience for kids. Nothing happens with that letter until you actually send it back to the college. Once you send it back to the college, what you're saying is that I agree to go here, and if I change my mind, right, then what's going to happen is I'm not going to be eligible at any other NCAA school. And so you have to be really careful about that. You have to make sure before you send that letter in, and usually there's a week or 2 week time period where you have to get it in by XYZ date. Make sure you have your financial ducks in a row before you send that letter in, because you know there are no do-overs with money.
Right.
And so make sure you have your financial ducks in a row before you send that letter in.
So the signing day is a little bit, you know, as you said, like pomp and circumstance. I mean, it's just kind of a nice celebration. Right.
Right.
And kids should do it if they want, but the real commitment is sending back that letter, and that's an important.
Then it's a contract.
Right. Then it's a contract.
Right.
Okay.
So, so yeah, so just be careful, know what it means, right? Like I said, I actually had a student who wasn't sure what she was going to do financially. And I said, and her signing day was the next day, you know, I said, go to the signing day, you know, participate in that. And then let's come back and we can go back and negotiate for more money and all of that good stuff that we're able to do. But do it quickly, because once you get that letter, once you send it in, you
can't negotiate after that, really. You're basically agreeing to whatever the deal is that's been offered.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. There's another good question. Before I ask the question, I just want to remind everybody that, first of all, I'm Debbie Schwartz. I'm here with Michelle Larson of Knowledge for College. And we're asking if you're interested in receiving a free consultation from Michelle. She's going to look at everybody, and we're going to randomly pick people who have commented in the comments. And just, you can quickly tell us the sport that your child is interested in playing in college. And then, you know, in the next few days, we're going to let this go for a few days because people like to watch the Facebook Lives when they're not live. And we'll pick, and she'll be picking out a few people to have a free consultation with. So it's a great deal. Okay, so there was a good question. Oh, now I got to find it. It scrolled by me. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, okay. It says, what is early or late to this process? It's a good question. My daughter is a sophomore, and we have heard that schools will be mostly done recruiting for the class of 2020 by June of this year. So there is this big question about, when should I start? Am I starting too early? Am I starting too late? You know, it's just like another layer of complication to the process when you're dealing with an athlete. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, I actually do have some thoughts on that. So let me tell you, in general, I like to start working with kids second semester freshman year. I feel like let's get them into high school, get them acclimated to high school, and then we can get started. As far as there are some sports, and it kind of varies by sport, right? So there are some sports that will indeed have their picks by the end of the year this year for 2020, but I wouldn't let that discourage you. All that means is that is at some schools, that's not at all schools. And like I said, I would rather have us do the reverse, like let us pick the schools and then we go after them. And they'll tell you soon enough, no, we're done with our recruiting, then we just go move on to the next school. Again, we're not going to do that Hope and Shirley method where we're just hoping and praying that somebody sees us. I've had examples of people getting approached by a coach even after they've already committed. My own daughter has been approached by a coach after she had known that she was going to go to the school she's going to go to. So it happens. It's not the end of the world, but the sooner the better. And like I said, we want to start our list. Now, here's something that I had happen. I had a parent tell me at a soccer game, oh, we want to come work with you, but our daughter's a sophomore, and so we'll come in next year because coaches cannot reach out to us until junior year. So you probably know that that is true, but there's no stopping you from reaching out to them. And anybody that I have a consultation with, I actually work with, so I'm not an athletic recruiter. I work with a recruiting consultant for my premium package if you really want somebody who's on your side and knows, you know, even more than I do about athletic recruiting. And she has a how to email a coach. And so I will be sending, when you make a consultation appointment and come to that, because there's some things to do. But the sooner you start getting out, we can email the coaches. We can go visit the coaches when we're on campus. They just can't reach out to us. But there's no harm in us saying, are you going to, and I'm in Florida, right? So we have the Disney Showcase, which is a big, big thing for soccer. And I know I keep talking about soccer, but remember my son is on track. So or it could be a combine, or it could be, you know, anything. But we have to reach out to the coach and say, hey, I'm really interested. I visited your school, or I'm very interested in your program, or I see how well you're doing. And so here, I'm going to be at the Disney Showcase. Here's my schedule. Here's my game times. Here's my jersey number. If you're going to be there, I hope you can come watch. Does that make sense? So like I said, they might not get back to you until junior year, or they can do it. I always have the kids put their coach's email and their parents' email right on that email. So if the coach wants to get in touch with them, they can do it.
So,
does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. So technically coaches aren't going to contact athletes until junior year in high school, but there's no reason why before that students can't be thinking about what schools they're interested in and reaching out to coaches ahead of time.
Right.
Okay. And so it sounds like,
and asking coaches, hey, this is my, asking coaches, hey, this is where I'm at, and I'm going to be at this tournament, or I'm going to be at that tournament, or I'm going to be here. Are you coming to this? You know, we want to reach out to them, and it has to be a personal email. We don't want to just switch out the names, right? So, dear Coach John, I really like XYZ College, and no, make it personal. I went to visit your school. I was really impressed with their nursing program. I want to be a nurse. I would love for you to come see me. Here's where I'm going to be. Will you be there?
Right. Okay. And so tell me a little bit about these camps. You know, is it worth going to the
Oh, that's
camps?
a good one.
How do you find out about them? All that type of stuff.
So my belief is that we need to go to the camps at the college that are of interest to us. So, but here's what happens, and it's happened to me as a parent, and it's happened to my clients. I get forwarded emails all the time, and you know what they say? Dear Callie, you have been selected to be at our premium, top level, only invitation only sporting camp. And by the way, it only costs $800, but we'd love to have you. Mm-hmm. That email goes out to a lot. Or, hey, so here's something that happened to me. My daughter's team last year went to the Disney Showcase, actually, but she had a sprained ankle, so she did not go. But we got an email 2 weeks later saying, we saw you playing at the Disney Showcase and wanted to invite you to our camp. She wasn't even there. Wow. She sprained her ankle. So take these for what they're worth. They are a marketing, it's a lot of money to go to these camps. It is better to go to a camp that you know that is at the college of your choice. Let's take football because I know there's a lot of combines. If you're going to go to a combine or you don't, the college you offer doesn't have that particular camp, they're called ID camps, they don't have an ID camp, then if you're going to go to one of these massive camps with lots of coaches, identify the 3 or 4 coaches that you want to look for. Reach out to them with the email that I talked about. Hey, I'm going to be at this camp. This is my jersey number. Look for their picture so that you can go up and introduce them. I also have my students make a 1-page profile that you can give them, anything to demonstrate that you are interested in them. We don't want to just go to a camp and again, hope and surely they'll see me because the school you want to go to, they could be walking by when you're off the field.
So basically, you're saying you need to kind of take advantage of every opportunity. So if you're going to spend the time and you're going to go to a camp, which sounds like it's worth it, you pick a camp, from a school that you potentially might be interested in, then kind of do your pre-research ahead of time, contact the coaches, don't just show up there and kind of hope that everybody will see you and, recognize that you're a great athlete. You want to kind of do some pre-work and
Correct.
And contact whatever coaches that you might be interested so that they can make sure that they see you. It's not just, you're not just kind of gonna, hope that they stop by and notice you.
Right. And like I said, I have my students not send this 1-page profile with a picture so the coaches know. I have you look for the coach, what their picture is. Then you go up to them and introduce yourself. Hi, I don't know if you got my email, this kind of thing. We're going to be very determined in the way that we do this. Not just, oh, they invited me. I was invited to this elite camp, and we get all hot and bothered because our daughter was invited or our son was invited to an elite camp. And I'm not saying let's celebrate that, but let's look at what it really is.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. Okay, so again, just going to remind everybody that I'm here tonight. I'm Debbie Schwartz, and I'm here with Michelle Larson of College for Knowledge. And people have already put their information in the comments, but if you want to tell us what sport your child is interested in playing, then please add it into the comments, and in a few days Michelle's going to go through and we're going to randomly pick a few people and give them a free consultation. So it's a really good opportunity. Okay, so let's see. So do you have any other stories of students that either, maybe came to you a little too late, or examples of how playing a sport really helped them, either to get into a school that they were interested in, or, get more money to actually pay for college? Any more, stories from your background?
Sure. So I think just in general, playing sports in college, it is a fabulous thing to do. And if you play a varsity level sport in high school, then there are opportunities for you to play in college. Like I said, you might not play at the D1 level, so I'm not talking about that, but there are plenty of schools that look for good student athletes that want to go there. And this can also help you pay for college, but we talked about this a little bit. They usually put the package together with some merit aid, some sports money, but it can be substantial. Sports money can range anywhere from just a little bit, a few $1,000s up to $9,000 or $10,000, depending on the sport, depending on what they need. So it can certainly be that beneficial. But like I said, you want to make sure that you're going for college for the right reason, and that really is to get a job. And just be mindful of what you pay in camps and stuff. I've just seen, yes, it can help pay for college, but it doesn't very often pay the whole bill. And so what I've seen happen, and what makes me sad, is that people will spend all kinds of money going to various camps. You spend thousands of dollars. My kids play at the club level. That's thousands of dollars. There's different levels of that, assuming that you're going to get a full ride. And I just want to be mindful of that you're probably not going to get a full ride depending on how the package is put together. So don't go into this just so that we can get a full ride for college, because you're probably not. And again, across the board, you could, but I don't want people counting on it. I have one person that plays with that I know in a sport that doesn't that has told me they're going to get a full ride, and doesn't have any
Right.
offers.
Right.
So it's again, I get it. I'm a mom. I want to celebrate and talk about how good my children are, but at the end of the day, so here's what I want people to think about. There are 2 million incoming freshmen that start college for the families that send a freshman to college for the first time every single year. 2 million families. Out of that, let's say top 10% are varsity athletes. I don't know that, but let's call it that. That's 200,000 athletes. There's about 700 schools that have athletic programs, maybe 800 schools. So just kind of put that into perspective onto what colleges need and what they might be looking at, and just understand you might be the big dog in your hometown, but that doesn't necessarily translate unless you have a directed approach to this. It doesn't always translate to getting a full ride, to getting sports money. And you're better off, and again, if students are listening to this, you are better off getting some academic money cobbled in with athletic money. So don't play the sport to the detriment of your grades,
Good point.
right? Because that's where you're going to get the most money. So make sure you keep your grades up.
So there's another interesting question here from Laura, and she's asking, is the fiscal year the same for most colleges? When do they generally get their budgets? I'm assuming she means the the sports budget.
For the sports budget? Yeah. I think it is, you know what, that's a good question, and I don't know the answer to it. So I apologize. I don't know when they get their budget. I know that when you go to the camps in the summer, they know how much they're getting. They typically will know how much they're getting, whether or not it actually comes into their possession, if you will. But they do know before each school year starts, they know how much they're getting. And I don't imagine that it changes too much year by year. So they know they're going to get, like I said, it's either a set dollar amount or it's by 4 full ride scholarships that you can divide up however you want.
And kind of
that's
a follow-on question, kind of similar, is I guess when you're offered a athletic scholarship, is it for 4 years? Is it the same amount? And is it guaranteed if you don't have any injuries? Are you guaranteed that scholarship for 4 years and for that same dollar amount?
Not typically. Really? Not typically. It is not. And
Wait,
so
is it not guaranteed for 4 years, or you don't?
It is not guaranteed for 4 years. So if you get hurt, or if they get a better player, or you don't have the stellar year that you're thinking of, it's not a guaranteed. Again, if the coach wants you bad enough and you say it has to be a guarantee, or they put it down, I'm not saying that never happens, but for most sports programs, there's no guarantee. They have limited funds. If you're not out, if you're on the field and you're not performing for whatever reason, it's freshman year and you didn't do what you needed to do, it is not a guaranteed. It is rarely, I'll say, it is rarely a guaranteed athletic scholarship for all 4 years.
Do you see that as a lot of pressure on students? I mean,
it's
like they really have to continue to perform year after year to make sure. I mean, it's kind of the same thing with academics, but I just feel like, I don't know, there's this physical performance may sometimes be a little harder, but that's just my opinion.
Well, that's why I do like to have a lot of merit aid cobbled in with that. I mean, some people might think that that's not a good way to go, but in my book, that's a really good way to go, because then you don't have to play. But at D1 schools especially, it is really hard. I've had student athletes who I have one in particular who wants to be an engineer, who was told by his coach, you cannot take engineering, you won't be able to do it. And so then you're forced with, what am I doing here? So it's a tough thing for kids, and that's why I know it.
So again, I'm just playing the clueless person. So
that's fine.
Is this a benefit of going to a D3 school? Is that, I mean, if you're going to you can play your sport if you get on the team, and whatever money you get is not dependent on the sport. So if you get merit money, in theory, hopefully it will last for the 4 years, and you have maybe a little less pressure in playing your sport, because it's not the same, you don't have the same thing on the line, that if you don't have a good year, you're going to lose that sports money.
Yeah, that's true. That's why when I have the kids pick the schools that match their career, that match what they want to do, we don't pay any attention to what D they are. right? We're going to get a group of schools, 15, 20 schools, and we're not going to pay attention to that because, and for some kids, and parents know this, for some kids, they can't stand the pressure. D3 is fine. Like I talk to the kids about, you have to decide, are you passionate about the game? Do you want to play this game? And if you want to play, then let's go to a place where you're going to have the opportunity to play, but it's not so much pressure. Remember, at D1 sports, they typically will have 2 seasons, regardless of the sport. They'll have their primary season and perhaps a training season or a second spring season if it's a winter sport, that sort of thing. So we have to be really mindful. It's a lot, it's a big commitment, especially if you're getting a lot of athletic money. It is a big, big commitment. And you have to be mindful of that before you send your son or daughter off to college for that.
Okay, so Laura has another comment, which I think is also pretty interesting. Exactly what she said. Yeah. She said, I've heard stories about coaches changing out in spring, for example, and then the new coach comes in with different priorities and decides not to renew some of the recruits from the previous coach. That's like a horrible situation. Wow.
That is a horrible situation, and it does happen, and it happens all the time.
Wow.
And yeah, so that's what I mean. This is why I keep stressing that is out of the athlete's control. And so that's why I mean, I know maybe parents don't want to hear this, but this happens and we have to be prepared for it. And that's why, you know, if you're counting on all of this money, you're getting $15,000 or $20,000 to go play at a D1 level and a D1 sport, and you can't afford that college without that $20,000 big ticket, then you have to know that that could go away. And like I said, your son or daughter could get hurt. I'm not wishing that on you, but we have to look at all of the possibilities and then decide, is this where we really want to go?
So let me ask you
but that does happen.
A question. Do you have suggestions? Are there other ways for a student to continue playing sports and not necessarily be on the official team?
Yes. So I have a student this year, actually, who really wanted to go to, and I'll just say, really wants to go to UF. She got into UF, which is hard to do. It's University of Florida. And she is not a D1 soccer player. And she said to me, you know what? I'm going to go play club. There's club sports. They actually have a very competitive club team, and she is all hippie happy about that. You're not part of the university athletic program per se, but you're part of this very competitive club team. There's also intramural sports that typically people can go to, and you can find all of that on the college's website. But there are plenty of ways that you can continue to play. It just doesn't pay. You know, you're not going to get any money to play at the club level.
Yeah, so but you'll get enjoyment.
But you go have fun. But you get to go have fun. There's no pressure. And if this is the right fit college for you, that's why I really focus on what is the right fit for you. Then we worry about playing sports all in the same time frame. I'm not saying we put it off, but we find right fit colleges. We have 10 or 15 different colleges that are the right fit. Then we continue to pursue them, and then we find and we reach out to the coaches, and we take that process all the way through senior year.
So, and I'm also going to remind people, and we'll put it in the comments, that we have a timeline from Michelle, an admissions timeline that's geared towards student athletes, and we'll put a link in for that. But something that I know you said to me a few times, which I thought was interesting, even though that this is a timeline that's geared towards student athletes, it's also just a general timeline. So you're going to see some things that might be particular to an athlete, but then a lot of it anybody can use, because as we're talking about now, this process is generally the same. There might be a little tweaks, that you have to do for athletes, but a lot of it is stuff that the athletes, whether you're an athlete or not, you still have to go through a similar process.
Correct. That's exactly right. I mean, I believe in, again, I keep stressing this, but I just believe in a holistic approach to going to college. And a lot of these things you have to do whether you're a student athlete or not. And sometimes what happens with athletes is they're so focused on the athlete or the sport that they forget all of these other deadlines. So I put kind of a little combination of both in that timeline. I have a more robust one for my clients that is more geared just towards the admission side of things, but I really wanted to share. I didn't just want to say, here's what you do as an athlete and here are the 10 steps that you do. I really wanted to give some thought and input on, here's what you have to do to get into college. And additionally, here are the athletic steps you can take.
Okay. Great. I think I'm just looking, I think we hit most of the questions that people had. Of course, people might leave questions later on, and we'll go back
I will try.
after. I'm just going to remind everybody, and a lot of people have already done it, if you want to get, in the circle of potentially getting a free consultation with Michelle, just put in the comments the sport that your student is interested in. If you're watching this and we're no longer live, you can still do that. We're going to wait probably 2 or 3 days and then pick randomly a few people from the comments. So if you're watching this later, feel free still leave your information in the comments about what sport you're interested in, and you'll be in the pool of people who can get a free consultation. So I mean, we've been on for about 40 minutes or longer, 50 minutes. And so how about just if you could leave us with like a few, like, the 3 top things that, somebody who has a student athlete should consider or think about. Is there anything that kind of quickly comes to mind that you would want to share with people as the things that they should absolutely walk away with from this Facebook Live discussion?
So again, I'm just going to stress that I think we go to college to get a job. So that to make sure they have, I cannot tell you how many student athletes come, or not even people that I'm working with, but when I see a high school senior or an early freshman, I always ask, hey, where are you going to college? And I'll tell you this quick story. And I met this one gal and I said, oh, where are you going to college? And she said, oh, I can't even remember. And I said, what are you majoring in? And she said, biology. And I said, well, what does one do with a biology degree? Because I really don't know. What do you do with a biology degree? And she said, well, I want to be a nurse. And I said, so why are you getting a biology degree? She said, well, because I wanted to play volleyball and this is the only college that asked.
Ah.
So
basically she
before you
on what she maybe what
correct.
she was majoring in to go to the school for the sport, instead of going to the school for what she wants to do after college.
Correct. So again, that would be my first point. Make sure that you're looking, be a little bit more directed in your college approach to college. Make sure you pick a college that has your major. Make sure that it's a financial fit, like we talked about briefly. Out-of-state public schools, out-of-state state schools, it's very difficult to afford them. I'm not saying it's impossible, but they have the least amount of merit aid to give, and oftentimes you cannot make it up with enough athletic aid. So keep that in mind. And then thirdly, this should be fun, right? So, and make sure your son or daughter really wants to play the sport. They should be passionate about the sport. We're not going to play the sport. They're just not going to enjoy it if they're just going because we got some money and that's what we're doing. So, so those were my 3 top things.
I think that's great. Well, thank you, Michelle. I mean, I know I'm the clueless one. I learned a lot, about what it's like to have a student who's also an athlete. And, some of the concerns and issues are the same, because we want them to graduate and have marketable skills and to know, that they can get a job and that we haven't, financed our retirement away. So that's the same regardless of what type of student you have. And then, you're also trying to use the sports as, a little bit of a leverage, and also, something for them to enjoy while they're in college. So,
right.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much.
Well, thank you, everybody.
And I'm hoping everybody got good information out of this. And again, this was Michelle Larson from College for Knowledge, and
Knowledge for College. Sorry.
Knowledge. Okay.
It's Knowledge for College.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Knowledge for College. It's been 50 minutes. Sorry, Michelle Larson.
That's okay.
That's okay. College. We're going to put the link in the comment section, and we'll be looking at any other questions that come through, and we'll answer them and put in your the sport that your student is interested in, and we're going to pick some free consultations. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Perfect. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Debbie. This was great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.